If you're really Dub Nation, hit the like button right now and subscribe to the channel, because today's conversation is the kind that messes with any fan's head. Turn on notifications as well, because the way things are going, a move could drop at any moment that changes the course of the season. And I'll tell you this, there are times when you can feel the behind-the-scenes noise louder than the hardwood. And today, the behind-the-scenes spoke. Because yes, I genuinely believe Joe Lacob let slip, even if unintentionally, what Golden State's thought process is when it comes to the trade deadline. And it wasn't in a press conference. It wasn't an official announcement. It wasn't on a stage. It was in the most dangerous place there is when the pressure tightens. A direct reply to a fan. When an owner decides to respond to an email, that isn't just being polite. That's a thermometer. That's the noise reaching the top. And when it reaches the top, something starts to move. But before we get into that reply, we need to talk about what's become the most unexpected symbol of this stretch. Pat Spencer. I know. If someone told you a while ago that a guy in this contract situation would become an urgent talking point for the fan base, you'd laugh. But basketball does that. And the Warriors, the way they are right now, do too. What's happening is simple to understand and hard to swallow. Pat Spencer is on a two-way contract, and that puts a clear cap on the number of games he can be used in during the regular season while he stays on it. That's not bureaucratic trivia. That becomes a clock, a countdown. And when a highly respected insider around the league says converting his deal is basically a matter of time, the news isn't only he deserves it. The news is the front office is going to be forced to make a decision. Because think about it. If the team keeps Pat Spencer as a two-way for too long, you hit a point where you simply can't use him the way you've been using him. And if he's active almost every night, even on nights when he barely plays, that shows two things at once. First, the coaching staff trusts him. Second, the coaching staff is already treating Pat like a real roster piece, even if the paperwork hasn't been stamped yet. And then comes the part that makes everything more interesting. Why does this matter so much right now? Because end-of-bench decisions are never only end-of-bench decisions. When you need to open a spot, you start shifting fits. You pull one piece and push another. You adjust the rotation. And most importantly, you get ready for the window when the market gets hotter. This is where fans feel that nagging discomfort that won't go away. Why is someone getting a massive green light while someone else is producing in limited space and still feels like they're living on a tightrope? Because that's the feeling. And it turns into anger when you watch a guy like Pat Spencer step in and play with ridiculous confidence, like he's got nothing to lose and everything to prove. When he's had a bigger opportunity, the numbers jumped. And even when he isn't starting, his three-point shooting has been sending a very clear message. It isn't luck. It's skill and confidence. And that isn't just cold stats. It's energy. It's vibe, like fans say. There are games where you can see it instantly. The team is more watchable with him on the floor. More fun. And with how this season has felt, that's worth gold. And the most curious thing is this didn't come out of nowhere. Players and the coach have already spoken publicly about Pat's dedication. That profile of a guy who's always working, always trying more, always preparing like he's about to play 40 minutes, even when he knows he might not leave the bench. That usually gets praised as a nice line until it becomes results. And when it becomes results, the nice line becomes a demand. So why doesn't he get full recognition? Why not a standard contract already? Why not minutes that match the impact? And that's when the comparison that splits the fan base inevitably shows up. Pat Spencer versus Brandon Podziemski. And here I'm going to be fair. Podziemski has qualities. His three-point efficiency has improved. That's real. But there's a big difference between making shots and being a threat. Volume matters. Courage matters. Reads matter. And most of all, responsibility matters. Because there are possessions where you look and think, why did the ball spend so long in the hands of someone who shouldn't be running that possession? Why does a whole possession drag and end in a contested shot when you had other routes? And then the fan ends up back in the same place as always. Consistency. You can't talk about a guy like he's a future all-star and at the same time ask the fan base for endless patience while the present is swallowing you whole. And right now, the present is swallowing them. The frustration is building. The team loses games it can't lose. The team swings wildly. The team looks heavy. And when that happens, fans don't want a lecture. Fans want action. So, all right, Pat Spencer's conversion might happen, and I think it will happen. But then comes the question that hurts more than the answer. When it happens, will he actually get real space, or will he just become another official name on a roster where the rotation already has its owners? Because signing is one thing, trust is another, using is another. And there are teams that sign a guy just so they don't lose the asset, but don't change the heart of the rotation. And if that happens here, it'll drive anyone mad. Now breathe, because the most explosive part comes when we connect this with the next domino, Jonathan Kuminga. No, I'm not stating he's going to be traded, but I will say what everyone's thinking, and few people say straight. His situation has gone weird. It's gone cold. It's got that don't touch it too much feel. When a player starts stacking DNPs and the narrative becomes coach's decision too many times in a row, at some point it stops being only a coach's decision. It becomes a signal. It becomes preservation. It becomes asset protection. It becomes a behind-the-scenes move. Because think about the most brutal market logic. If you believe you might use a player in a deal, what's the worst thing that can happen? He gets injured. Full stop. So some teams, when they slip into that mindset, put the guy in a kind of freezer. And that can be smart or it can backfire, depending on what you're building. But that's how the league works when the pressure rises. And now, put it all together. If you're close to needing to convert a two-way contract, and at the same time you've got a young player living through DNPs and uncertainty, it becomes hard to ignore that pieces might be getting arranged. Not just for a small move, but to open lanes, to create options, to get the board ready. But then comes the bomb, Joe Lacob's reply to the fan. A fan sends an email basically saying what the entire Dub Nation repeats out loud or quietly. Do something. Because you can't rely on heroic performances every night and pretend that will carry a whole year. The fan points to needs, awkward fits, the lack of a real center, the sense of waste when certain skills aren't being used the right way. And then the reply comes. And the point isn't only the content, it's the tone. When an owner replies with something like, "You can't be as frustrated as I am, I'm working on it," he's acknowledging two things. First, he knows it's bad. Second, he knows the pressure has become personal. And that alone changes the conversation, because the standard line would be to hide behind, "We believe in the project." When he answers at that level, he's accepting the weight. But there's a detail that nags. The me. Because even if the owner runs the big picture, the day-to-day basketball calls should be driven by the general manager. And when the owner shows up as the protagonist, that can read as strength or as interference. And then the fan asks the question nobody wants to ask, but everyone asks, how much real autonomy does the front office have? How much of this is basketball decisions, and how much is decisions tied up in emotions, history, internal politics, coaching preferences, fear of making the wrong move, attachment to certain profiles? Because in that same reply, there are hints like, "It's complicated," and the coach's wishes regarding players. And in behind-the-scenes language, that can mean a lot. It can mean, the coach doesn't want to play this guy. It can mean, the coach wants a different type of player. It can mean, this guy doesn't fit what the coach believes in. And when you're in the middle of a turbulent season, any phrase like that turns into petrol. And at the center of that petrol is the name that splits the roster, Jimmy Butler. There are fans who look and think, he isn't the problem. And there are fans who look and think, for that salary, he has to be a bigger part of the solution. And both can be true at the same time, because nobody's saying he's a bad player. What's being said is, as it stands, it isn't enough. You can't pay that much and use the guy like a side piece in the offense. You can't take a player who can create, control tempo, decide in the half court, and turn him into someone who spends whole possessions watching the ball swing around without touching it at the right moment. And then you get the coach's own self-critique in public. I need to get him more into rhythm. Bring the game to him. We need his scoring and his creation. And that's a strong message, because when the coach admits that, he's saying, the plan hasn't been executed the way it should. And then I ask you the question that annoys fans the most. Why did it take so long to notice? Why were there so many possessions where the ball got stuck in the wrong hands, while the player who should be organizing and attacking was waiting in the corner? The offense needs a clear hierarchy, and the Warriors right now look like a team that sometimes plays like it's waiting for a miracle at the end of every possession. That isn't a system. That's survival. And then when you go back to Lacob's words and read carefully, you feel the subtext. Jimmy isn't the problem. Fine. But then he has to be used as a solution consistently. He has to be an engine. More sets starting through him, more decisions flowing through him, more moments where the team says, "This is yours now." Because that's how an expensive roster justifies itself, shared responsibility, and the stars actually doing their jobs. And while that doesn't happen, what's left? The fan looking at the bench, looking at the rotation, looking at who gets minutes, looking at who disappears, and thinking, someone is holding something back. Someone is preparing something. Someone is protecting themselves from something. That's the atmosphere where rumor becomes possibility. That's the atmosphere where a team starts thinking bigger with trades. Because when you realize you can't fix it with speeches, you've got two options: accept the season as it is, or change the pieces. And the Warriors are in that dangerous zone where accepting hurts, and changing does too. And then you start hearing names, ideas, scenarios, a center who fixes the paint, a bigger body who takes weight off players who already have a lot of miles, someone who provides a steady second source of points, someone who brings stability in those minutes where everything starts to fall apart. But every trade has a price, and that price almost always runs through young assets and draft picks. And then Lacob's line reads differently. "I'm working on it." If that's true, it might mean that for the first time in a while, he's willing to pay a higher price than before. It might mean he's realized that protecting the future too much can end up killing the present, and in some cases it can even end up wasting the final years of your greatest on-court icon. But there's a limit, and that limit is emotional and sporting. There are players who, for this franchise, aren't treated as just players. They're symbols, and when a symbol goes into negotiations, the franchise becomes something else. It isn't a trade, it's a rupture. That's why Dub Nation is so locked in on this, because the vibe is different. The owner replied to an email. The insider said Pat's contract is going to change. The rotation looks strange at key points. Jimmy's usage feels below what it needs to be, and the team, overall, doesn't project control. All of that together doesn't guarantee any trade. But it does indicate one thing. The pressure has reached a level where words now carry the weight of decisions. So I want to ask you two things, straight, because this says a lot about what you're seeing too. Does Pat Spencer deserve more minutes than he's been getting? If yes, comment 61. If you think the coaching staff is right to hold back a bit, and that Podziemski still deserves priority, comment 2. And the other question is heavier. Do you believe Kuminga is being kept on ice for market strategy? Comment Y if you think yes. Comment N if you think no. Kai Sotto, at 22 years old, is an athlete with an impressive track record, something that grabs everyone's attention. His size is remarkable, but what truly makes a difference is the combination of this attribute with his skill and agility. With a clear mastery of the paint game and an offensive ability that stands out, he is the type of player who can make a significant impact on any team. When we consider his qualities, it becomes evident that we're talking about a center who is not only a rim protector, but also creative on offense, making him a real promise for the future. However, his stature and talent are only part of the challenge. The transition to the NBA is a tough process that requires much more than one might expect. The intensity of the league, the speed of the plays, and the physical demand are levels higher than those found in any other basketball league in the world. And this presents a huge challenge for any young player. If Kai Sotto were to be signed by the Golden State Warriors, the implications go beyond the court. The Bay Area, where cultural diversity is a trademark, has a significant Filipino community. Kai's presence as a Filipino would not just be another addition to the team, but a symbol of pride and representation for millions of fans around the world. His impact could be felt not only on the court, but also in the hearts of the fans. Imagine the energy at the Chase Center upon seeing this player, who represents a segment of the global population with so much passion. The Filipino fan base, with its contagious enthusiasm, could transform the atmosphere, creating a unique vibe at every game. Furthermore, by attracting more international attention, the Warriors could expand their brand to unimaginable levels, reaching new markets, especially in Southeast Asia, where basketball has been growing significantly. The entry of a young athlete into the NBA is always a moment filled with challenges, and with Kai Sotto, it wouldn't be any different. The league demands more than just natural skill. Consistency and defensive agility are equally essential. Although the athlete has shown potential at various times, his experience in the Japanese league demonstrated that there are still adjustments to be made. Moments of brilliance are clear, especially on offense, but the NBA's level is unforgiving, and every weakness is quickly exploited. Kai will need to improve his adjustment to the fast-paced rhythm of the league and refine aspects of his game that may be vulnerable. As much as the NBA is a trial by fire for any player, the good news for Kai is that the Warriors, a franchise known for developing talent, could be the perfect environment for him. Under the guidance of great sports legends like Stephen Curry and Draymond Green, along with a highly qualified coaching staff, Kai could evolve in impressive ways, learning and absorbing as much as possible from those who are references in global basketball. However, the pressure to be ready to contribute will be immense. Every spot on the Warriors roster is valuable, and the team aims to win more titles now while preparing for the future with promising young players. Therefore, Kai will need to quickly show that he's ready to be an important piece in the team's pursuit of their next championship. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep up with more content like this, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. That way, you'll stay updated on everything happening in the basketball world. Oh, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell to get notified whenever a new video is posted here. Leave your comment too, we want to know your opinion. See you in the next video.